Today, hopefully it lands well. What do you call a pile of cats?
What?
A meowton. Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Did your daughter say it?
What's that?
Did your daughter say it?
What?
Your daughter, did she say
Oh, she did. Yes. She liked this one. Yeah. So.
Caleb said we're gonna start bringing tomatoes.
That's fine. I'm good. Just make them like Nerf tomatoes, because Daryl doesn't want to have to clean that up. All right. Our guest today, many of you know, is Kim Hinton, author of Netherland, High School Temptation, Insurance Age, Stolen Resolution, and Murder, among all of the other accomplishments Kim has. But today, I believe you're here primarily to talk about your book. We do have Kim's book available here, so at the end of the meeting, if you would like a copy, come on up. And then I just recently found out about 5 minutes ago, it is available on Audible for audiobooks for those of you that spend a lot of time in the car like I do. I may find it while I'm sitting here and get it purchased so I can listen to it that way. And John Dietrich, I believe you are going to introduce Kim. By doing that, I will attempt to maybe John be nice.
What an honor and privilege it is for me to introduce this guy. If you remember, those that are a little older, I had Kim come speak to us probably back in 2015, somewhere around there when we were at Stones River Country Club. That was a phenomenal, was it about the Last Supper, or I forget what it was totally about, but I know it was awesome. He didn't give me a bio, but I have a bio for him. He probably didn't want me to read it, but I'm going to anyway. Kim Hinton is an architect, urban designer, visual artist, historian, and author. He was born in Nashville, raised in Murfreesboro. A lot of you probably knew that, and holds degrees from UT Knoxville, University of Pennsylvania, and I can't pronounce this. It's in French. École des Beaux-Arts. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. He was founding Arts. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. He was founding partner with Sieb Tuck of Tuck Hinton Architects. Their firm's architectural work received state, regional, and national awards, and their buildings have been publicized in prestigious international design journals of Italy, France, Germany, and Japan. Kim is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. He is recipient of the AIA Tennessee William Strickland Lifetime Achievement Award, and he is now studio director of Kim Hinton Design. Kim and I go back a long ways. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I can remember it vividly. My brother was his roommate at UT Knoxville, and I got to spend a weekend with him, with both of them up in Knoxville for a weekend, and I had a great time. And that's all I'm going to say about what happened. But I was 5 or 6 years old. But he's a fraternity brother. He's a good man, and I'd say it's an honor to be him. So, Kim Hinton.
John. John's brother is Norman Dietrich, and hope you get having met John to meet Norman. Just a great guy. Worked at a place called Pronto Ryan, which a small little restaurant across the street near Murfreesboro. He did his high school, and then we were in college, and we were very friends. We were Sigma Chi's at UT. I remember distinctly when this little kid, the brother shows up, and he's so cute, and ended up being a Sigma. Listen, folks, I'm going to talk about a story. Let's say one thing up front. If anybody in the audience that knows or is related to Netherland, I want you to know that if you were set my story on him, I wrote the story because of something that happened before his death, and then after his death. His funeral was back here in murdered John and John's body, and said incorrect words, and also I have a family, so I just make sure that's up front. It's really interesting for me to think about. I was educated, especially about high school days. I mean, I went to high school. Yesterday, Billy had Carson. Hey, don't 3 guys more about me than I want them to, and I'll tell you something. I went to school, different and different. I'm thankful for me. And for the class 1972, so the class in State Street, 1972 Central High, and we're still in touch with my friends. I keep up with Murfreesboro, and I went to Central High, and then I went to UT. Along the way, I was impacted by some in positive ways, some not so way. One of them said nothing. I remember I shared this in the book about what Murfreesboro was going to tell, actually about it. One of the things great for me is I was in Scouts, just too raw. on the left, pretty prominent business person. And so right is Jim was he was the most and he was like he was a boy. He let him get whatever. He always, he would get by his neck and he did, but he really too. And so in the 5th grade, Scouts and then the Boy Scouts in 5th grade, and Ed was set for meetings. And kind of usual was Ed grew up in Odell here, and I was at school in Riverview, so it was kind of from another town, and I was understand when a scout was campus school in a mid-hill area, and we had meetings, he seemed interested in scouts. So I was kind of a hockey guy, and I was going into training. Now, what happened later is I had the chance to work at Jonesboro Country Club, because I had the 8th grade work after 8th grade, 9th grade. Before we working there, your day, David Parson, everybody hands you David was a quarterback of the state championship football team. Everything I've never ever been. Handsome athlete, great. That's good. Miller was a year older than him. He was all-state center basketball team. We went to Valley. He's strong, and we were working on with two other guys. Me, I'm a skinny guy on the front. We were both skinny, unled. I don't put myself in things, but compared to other kids, they were athletic, this thing. We were kind of quiet. I was interested in art and drawing. Then there's Ed. Ed was not working on the country club. We were us above. We were meant we got back under 9 holes, and they developed 9 holes. And we were clear the land, massive stuff. We called 9. Of course, it's all 3 ones there. We could remember. It's just nothing was big feet. Ed was up to idea, some sort of country club. And I think he really enjoyed these often. The Swiss times, but again, the presentations, but you know, the next school be the best high school in the Texas. That's what 3 country. I would never. He never went to school. It's just where everybody counted. A big high school for those people had. Everybody had. The advantage of that was. Everybody in the was there. Blacks, whites, poor, rich, beautiful women, not so beautiful women, thugs, everything. Every type of community was there. And I remember thinking, hallway, this is up. I remember thinking it was a mile. It just went on. And the interaction of students there was really interesting. I had a little group, another little group. I was a band manager. It was a good way of getting on band trips. All we did is carry something called Blue Box and made that close. So people do it. The rest were really beautiful. And here, of course, is the championship team. And Ed's a trainer. I think that's built. David Briley should have immediately left, and Briley went on to be a trainer at Alabama, whereas Netherland was a trainer, and he went to the University of Tennessee on a full scholarship. Big deal. As Parsons went out as public. And as I was doing research books, it took me like 11 years to write it. I talked with different people that you had. Beth Morgan is on the picture here on the left, and that's Martha Sykes on the picture on the right. He had problems getting dates. When we had our final year at Central, we built this big float, and the small guy on the front in a furry coat looks like the little guy on the front. That is Gary Hood. This is John Hood's son. John Hood, one of the assistants ever. Gary Hood's little guy with a little beanie up there, and that's his senior high school. Like next year, he grew like 8 inches and became the most famous manager of production shows. He has an Oscar, an Emmy, a Tony, and he has 4 of the most prominent awards as a stage manager. In fact, we had a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen him several times. One time I said, "Gosh, did you get to know William Shatner?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know Bill." I went, "Oh, you know Bill?" He goes, "Yeah, Bill Shatner." And he knew more people than you can imagine in world entertainment. And I want to point out because he came from little Murfreesboro, and he was a little kid in high school, but boy, that changed. He's like 6'2". The best thing about high school, oh man, we had so many beautiful girls. And I had a date when I was senior in high school, and she decided that she was in a high school sorority. I was in a high school fraternity. I looked at her, and Andy Hayes and David Parsons were in SPO. That was kind of the better college high school fraternity. And Peter and I went, y'all just say it was a more fun high school fraternity. Anyway, we had dances, and girls were in 2 sororities, and that's Delta Beta Sigma sorority to the left. And my dad had have a really nice gown for something, a formal dance. And you were obligated to buy, a corsage that they wore, okay? Well, she had a purple dress, and so I went to Ryan's Flower Shop, which is down across the street from the old library, now the Art Center. And I walked in and said, "I need a purple corsage," and they go, "Great." And I picked it up. It was orchids. I never paid so much for one flower in my life. I almost thought I was going to have a heart attack. But it looked good on her. In high school days, there's Ed talking to Arden Ritter, who was one of the most popular people in high school. Ed's talking to her. He's part of the Key Club. I'm sorry, he's a picture. And I don't know if you can kind of make the image a little bit smaller, because in this picture with me, there I am trying to look tough, and with me is, if you, uh-oh. Of course, I don't really need a light on me anyway. But I'll put it in the same picture to beside me, and I don't know if you can show that. Yeah, if you slide over something, just slide the image. Yeah, he should be there. He can come on screen. He's here. Oh, well, okay, so we'll go on. Okay, so one of the cool things, of course, we had speech last. And one of the cool things is when we graduate, we had the senior prom. Now, there's Gary Hood. He's starting to get a little stank. And you can see this is the background we had for our prom picture in 1972. And fortunately, someone came up with the idea that we would meet in 10 years and put the date on the prom picture that the reunion was going to be on December 26th in 1981. That's 10 years ahead, but it's on that picture. And, you know, I'm sorry, it's sort of hard to show the edge. But that's a big deal, you know, telling people we will get back together in 10 years. Central closed. I did this little cartoon, you know, what's Central High? Because, you know, as far as we were concerned, high school was going to close. It became a middle school. And off I went to Tennessee with Ed Netherland, Parsons also. When I was there, I decided to join a college fraternity. This was Fraternity Row. Fortunately for me, Netherland joined Lambda Chi. I joined Sigma Chi. He joined Lambda Chi because of a guy named David Lowry. You know Ed Lowry, famous banker here or whatever, and Ed Lowry, and Ed Lowry, that's Ed Lowry. David Lowry was a judge here for many years, and I asked him to come today. He had a conflict, he couldn't attend. But he was a really cool guy. He's a couple of years older than Ed, had a curve, you know, just a cool guy. I met people in my college fraternity, wonderful. One was R.B. at the far end. Now, that's the husband of Pat Summit. He was the sharpest guy I had ever met on the far right. My just long friend after college is Bill Tate. He's on our left. So I had this wonderful occasion to meet so many prominent people. They were young boys. Bill Baddour is a prominent CPA last year. Again, why did I in the fraternity? We had beautiful little sisters. Wonderful. There's a guy who's in charge, Stephen Colbert. He was in all cotton that day. He was a fun guy. My girlfriend, as I was studying this girl, when I was in college, I was pretty faithful for a couple years. Which meant I studied hard, you know, like back and forth, drove my parents crazy. Because I come back from Knoxville, I'll get car keys, go see the girlfriend, you know, and I'll do wash or some of the wash I'll bring home, and I'll drive back to Knoxville. But the girl lived on a farm, and she had blackberries, and one time we went out and got all these blackberries, and she said, let's make blackberry wine. I said, what? She had balloon wine. I said, what is that? We mix up a concoction in a pot with sugar and everything, the juice of blackberries, grapes, and after it ferments, you put it in a jar, in a gallon container, you put a balloon on top. What happens is, as it's fermenting, the balloon is bigger, and then it fills back up, and it does that for like a week. Finally, you know, it's not doing it anymore because everything has been fermented. All the sugar's been eaten by the yeast. And I bought the wine, and I actually still have 4 bottles made in summer of 1974. I have little wines that I have. I opened one last year. I had 5. I opened one last year, and they were pretty good. 1974. Anyway, and I continue to make wine. And since she taught me how to make wine, I have been making wine in the past few years. I get Jews from Europe, either France, Italy, or Spain, and I actually make pretty good wine. But those from 74, that's right. Now, while I'm at UT, some things happened. You may remember streaking, right? Streaking was pretty wild. It happened in a nation, several nights and everything. But in February, the end of February 1974, it occurred on Cumberland Avenue, which it was the main business district beside the University of Tennessee. It was called something before streaking occurred there, but it really got that nickname anchored forever because Cumberland Avenue was called the Strip. Well, that's where the stripping occurred. It was wild. I think every student in UT came to that place that night. It was absolutely wild. I had worked with Ed Delbridge in the portrait studio, which was downtown, and I had worked there. I worked there during the summers in college, and I had a little Minolta camera, and I had my camera with me. I was walking around taking pictures. I had slide film, not print film. There's our fraternity sitting on top of the building going crazy, and then the girls and everything. Well, this next picture, a little racy, but that was in the newspaper, so I can show it publicly. I didn't take a picture, but it was just absolutely wild. Well, y'all remember the Jetsons? Okay, the Jetsons had a dog. Y'all remember the dog? The dog was named Astro. Now, this is a cartoon. Now, why am I showing this? Because Astro said a funny thing if something bad was going to happen. Okay. Well, something bad happened to me. I came home one weekend, saw my girlfriend, who I thought we'd get married and all that good stuff. I was very faithful at UT, made really good grades because I was faithful. And so I met her over at her dorm at MTSU. She comes out and sits in the front seat and says, and she looks at me, and I'm thinking, ruh-roh, something bad's going to happen. Yeah, it happened. She said, we're breaking up. Okay. Why? Well, she wanted to go to something, and I don't blame her at all. One of the major fraternities in MTS, she was Kappa Alpha, had the really sharpest people, the sharpest guys, and they had something every spring called the Old South Ball. Well, she wanted to go to that. And so, I got ditched so she could go to have a good time at the Old South Ball. Now, meanwhile, Ed is still at UT as a trainer, and you can barely see his date to the side there on the picture on the side. Susan Huntington, she was the head majorette of the Pride of the Southland band. And during halftime at UT, Ed is with the team in the locker room with Parsons and, trying to get ready during halftime to come back on the field. And later Ed is dating this head majorette, and she was the star of halftime show. She would come in and she would twirl her baton like orbit, and she always caught it. She was just incredibly beautiful, like ballerina. And, everybody watched her. For how big that stadium is, what the pressure is on her. She was glorious. Of course, we knew Ed was dating this girl. It's like, he's doing okay. He is hot stuff. Now, UT ended up playing at Auburn, and I'd been ditched by my girlfriend. So this is a fall of 74. And so it was the third game. UT used to play Auburn the third game every year, and it was something that always happened. But this particular year, the game was in Auburn. UT used to play Auburn in Birmingham, but wisely, Auburn finally had a decent stadium, and so the game was going to be there. And Norman Dietrich, your brother and I, we drove down there in your brother's Nova, which had a hole in the floorboard so that I'm sitting there watching the pavement go by under my foot. It was not the best car, but we had a great time. And of course, I wanted a date at Auburn. Norman had a good date, right? I can tell you who that was. She was beautiful. And so I was thinking that's what my date would be, blind date, okay, at Auburn. No, it was more like this. I had the worst blind date of my life. I mean, it's like just terrible. I've been ditched, and now I'm at Auburn trying to find a beautiful girl, because every other girl in the entire stadium was beautiful with a sundress, and I'm stuck with this. It was not fun. I mean, she doesn't really look that way. Well, maybe she looks that way now. I don't know. Who knows? Meanwhile, UT, years go by, Ed Netherland's still doing his thing. He gets his degree in business. And I'd start doing graphic artwork. Similar to Billy Pitter, we both always did graphic art, so I would do posters. I got to meet the famous author that wrote All President's Men, Bob Bernstein. So it's kind of fun to meet these different people. I met Eldridge Cleaver and Master Johnson, Daniel Shore, all these people. And the Hill, University of Tennessee was a great place. I just have great memories of it. And similar, Ed and I were similar, and we were kind of preppy. There was a book came out in 1981 or something that kind of described who they like as fat boys and preppy boys and stuff. And I think that holds true for both of us. We may not have been as different as I thought we were. He gets out of college and he starts working for his father's insurance company on Maple Street. And he's very gregarious, he's very friendly, he's very good. And of course, he actually has now a business with his dad. On the other hand, I had no money, and I went to graduate school at Penn. That's a great building at Penn, and I spent the summer in Paris. Came back and had no money, but came back for the girl. Came back for my sweetheart. And as I mentioned, that the reunion had been scheduled for 1981. Well, it occurred, and it was a huge, huge success. I mean, like 80% of the graduates showed up. It was, and with their dates or husbands or whatever. So it was out there, and it was absolutely wall-to-wall people. It was like it was a fabulous party. So Netherland decides to get involved in a strange business called toxic waste. Now, our nation needs toxic waste disposal facilities. We really need those. Well, Ed could tell he could have a lot of money if he established one, and he tried to do it in Pulaski, Stiles County. He did it in the town. He decided to do it there, and he raised money. He got money from all kinds of investors in Nashville to buy land and develop a toxic waste incinerator. The people at Pulaski weren't happy about that. And they had the largest rally ever in Pulaski history to protest it. At the same time, they took out a newspaper ad the Daily News Journal. These are people in Pulaski pay for a big ad in the Murfreesboro paper that basically says Mr. Ed Netherland is going to pollute our county, and I don't know how that affected his family, but I sure would want an ad in my paper, that my mom and dad were reading saying, "We hate your guts." That's basically the case. They just were, they would do anything possible to stop it. They stopped it. So Ed moved the project straight south into the poorest county, Mississippi, which means the poorest county in the United States. Knoxville County, where the Choctaws still had property, and it was a town that needed employment. They weren't quite as well organized, but they were organized enough, particularly with one outspoken woman and a group of the Choctaws, that they protested it and they wanted to stop it. And they stopped it, but really they didn't quite stop it because EPA, the national EPA, put a moratorium on toxic waste facilities, and that killed Netherland's project. Other people were trying to do the same thing in that county because it was a great target for building something bad in a county that needed the money. And this guy, Colin Crawford, writes a book about it. It's a 400-page book. Colin Crawford was a reporter. He's now the dean of the law school at the University of Arkansas. He is a big shot. He's really smart. In this book, 400 pages. Ever see the movie called Erin Brockovich? Where she's challenging, This book is the same thing, but it's a real story about Ed Netherland doing this. Well, Netherland had copies of it that he would give to people. I don't think I'd do that if I was the subject of the book. He gave it, and the reason he did that is he could prove if you need a badass, I'm your badass, excuse the terminology. If you need somebody to do something that's going to be really controversial, I'm your person. What makes somebody be able to do that, to be able to tolerate the hatred of two full counties, citizens, everything? I don't know. But the book came out, and another thing that made Netherland strong is he had cancer, and he rose above it. He had terrible cancer. He had a great doctor in Nashville who was the most disturbed about the fact that Netherland, when he was murdered, they never caught the guy. And I've talked with him several times, Robert Oldham, and he really admired Ed's fortitude. Ed got back in the insurance business and really made the big money. He was a great salesman. He had a big farm out in Las Casas. His office was down at West End. We have our 25th anniversary, and while we're there, Netherland shows up late. He drives this convertible Mercedes up, and he parks in the fire lane out front, which is typical of him. I remember I left, and his car is sitting out front, parked in the fire lane. You're not supposed to do that, right? That's what he did. And he walked around, flirted with the girls. I did too. It was a fun evening. There are other people that did sort of strange things with waste. And another Ed in our high school class, Eddie Matthews. This is the VA hospital that you know out on Lebanon Road, right? Well, Eddie had property near what was a waste disposal place called Middle Point Landfill. And he sold the property, and that's why the landfill got much bigger. I think they paid him like $30 million, and he kind of went away. He had a whole lot of money and went away, and he actually vanished. Eddie Matthews vanished. His ATV was found on a creek where he had moved to, and he may have gotten into drugs or other stuff, but he is a missing person. Meanwhile, the landfill gets huge. And I know you're dealing with it right now, right? I mean, this is still going on. It was supposed to be closed, and it's still going on. You see it, when you drive down Lebanon Road, if you have it, first time I drove down Lebanon, we call it Lebanon Road, not Lebanon. Lebanon Road, I was driving from Lebanon, came back to Knoxville, got Lebanon Road, and I saw off to the side. I almost drove off the road. It's like, where did this mountain come from? And I know you're dealing with it, and dealing with a lot of issues. I hope you're able to stop it. I really hope you're able to stop it. That's the impact on the person. On the other side, I'm sorry, the screen is a little to the side. But there's another person that's involved at the same time. And his name was Bob McLean. And I'm sorry you can't see his image on the side. Bob McLean became a very wealthy investor for people. He was a KA, which meant he had a lot of investors that were KA fraternity brothers, and that's the fraternity which stole my girlfriend, okay, at the old top ball. But he approached my father and said, I want them to name the music hall at MTSU after your father, which they did. It's called Hinton Hall. And we went to an event, and it was one of the most wonderful things for my father ever. I mean, my father, mother, and I, we all teared up. That's a great honor. He arranged that to happen because he was giving money to MTSU. He was giving out lots of money. He gave all the Steinway pianos to MTSU. Huge check. There he is. $1 million check. Then he decides to give a Country Music Hall of Fame. Bill Monroe's banjo, I think, and he gave like a banjo, a mandolin, and guitars, I think, one of the original guitars, more than $1 million worth, gave it to the Country Music Hall of Fame as a gift. They were freaking out. What a great guy this is. It was a scam. And I don't know if you remember, Bob McLean was running a Ponzi scheme, and he screwed over his fraternity brothers, and literally, of course, they were catching him. He never asked my father for an investment, which was probably because I remember asking my dad, how come Bob is so rich? And Dad said, I don't know, I think on apartments or something like that. Bob McLean asked so many of his friends for money, screwed him over totally. He drove back to Shelbyville, parked behind a church, blew his head off. Not the way to go. So back to Ed's wrapping up his career, he gets involved and develops a type of life insurance policy called Lilacs. This has sort of never been done. I sort of remember the purple of the purple corsage, and the book has a lot about purple in it because it keeps popping back up. But he becomes a nationally known expert in huge life insurance policies. And I mean, this is an article from the New York Times. I mean, this is a big deal. And he becomes really, really wealthy. So wealthy that he has his office in the Hemsley building. That's the building there in front of the MetLife building. His office there. He's a member of the Friars Club, which is off to the side there. Elite group. He has a penthouse apartment. He has the big farm out in Las Casas. He had the first Bentley ever seen in Rutherford County. Netherland was doing really well. But the financial crisis happened. And he had sold some investment products. And as the financial crisis hit, and there were multiple lawsuits like you can't imagine, because $80 to $100 million from different groups, and they're suing everybody, including a person with Fifth Third Bank, who reportedly left the United States, skedaddled, and other people did. And I don't know how he managed to survive the lawsuits. But he had invested in land in U.S. Virgin Islands on St. John's Island. St. John's is beautiful, the smaller of the three Virgin Islands. And you see it's a long island. See the far edge there? That's called East End. And this is a close-up of the East End. And Ed was staying at a house there, a beautiful little rental house as far away from civilization as possible. This is in 2014. Why was he there? It was an off-the-grid house, had solar power, it had water and stuff, but completely off the grid, so remote. Here's a picture of it. Now, across the waterway is the British Virgin Islands. You want to be out in the middle of nowhere? He was out in the middle of nowhere. And he was murdered at this place. The police showed up the next day, and I don't know, the police in St. John's dealing with other murders of some tourists. They wanted to make that really quiet because it affects people coming down. Like, there's been 3 murders on St. John's Island, and none of them have been solved. And someone told me you could probably pay somebody $5,000 and kill them. Because there are 2 classes of people. 2 classes of people in St. John. The haves and the have-nots. Not like Mississippi, where you try to do toxic waste incinerator. You have the haves and have-nots. And so there's a disparity there, and it didn't work out so well for Ed. The police said that it was a burglary that may have gone wrong, but I don't buy that because the only thing they took was his wallet and his watch. He probably had a very expensive watch because he ran around with a lot of famous people, a lot of wealthy people. You know, and people they have to have the Rolex. You know, what's Rolex? You know, I got $15,000 versus $20,000. He may have known Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein's island is very close by. And Netherland, I know, would have wanted to know Epstein because Epstein before all the sex. So Epstein was the most powerful single individual around the Virgin Islands. Everybody wanted to meet him and either do a proposal for investment or whatever, be on hobnobbing with everybody that visited with Epstein. But it didn't work out. Something occurred at the funeral that I can't tell you. The FBI, I wrote the FBI, as did Oldham, trying to find out, well, who in the world killed this guy? I just can't, because somebody after a funeral, I became very interested in who killed him and why. And there were actually 4 different reasons why he had been staying at this remote house. But he was killed, his body was brought back, they handled his funeral, and he was buried. And the FBI didn't close the case. They just it was a hurricane. A few years later, two hurricanes went through the island, and so they either washed it away or blew away any remaining evidence. The house survived, and the house is now available. You can rent it. Now it's like, so Story for Ed has a sad ending. But he's buried in Greenland Cemetery. Like there, somebody put skull, tobacco things. It's like, he's remembered, and his story is interesting. He was never my friend. I consider him a bully, but his story is interesting. He had more ambition than anybody I've ever known. And maybe with the right tilt, things would have gone differently. For me, though, is also to thank my upbringing and all the people I grew up with here at Central, in the Central High School class. There's Andy's on the left in the middle picture. Didn't change at all, right, Andy? You're still good-looking guy that you are. You're in other pictures in the book and Peter's in the book. And so it's my ability, my honor to thank them for being good friends in high school. And we remain good friends. Here's the other thing about reunions I like. Reunions have justice. Because when you come to a reunion, 10th reunion, 20th, or maybe the final reunion we had, which was this one, the 50th reunion, the really pretty girl that's a snob in high school is now just a snob. And maybe a brutal guy that was a bully is just a bully and hadn't had a very good life. And the beautiful girl that was a beautiful and so friendly, and I can think of it for Kathy Maloney, Jill McIntyre, and Jenny Dismukes, they were beautiful in high school. They are beautiful now, and they're so lovely to be around. And so I had the fortune of growing up with these folks, and we were still good friends. Each one of them had an impact, very different. Netherland's impact was very different. The book has done well. It's received 3 awards. I'm headed to Phoenix at the end of next week for a top honor, first place for memoir, actually, which is for a little guy that grew up in Murfreesboro. I feel pretty happy about that. And I want to thank you for listening to this. Thank you very much. And take some questions. Yeah. I know it's running a little long. You gonna ask me a question? Okay.
Did you ever find out any reason why he was murdered? I've heard that, and I heard that it was pretty brutal. But there's just always rumors.
The details are not to be disclosed. But the reality is, I think that if he had borrowed some serious money, maybe up to $900,000 from an individual, or maybe from someone involved in the Russian mafia, and there may have been a girl involved that he was interested in. Netherland has been married twice and divorced twice, so it could have involved a girl. Not quite sure. But that's a mystery that I don't know. Maybe I'll write a sequel if we find out the answer. You got questions? You're letting me off easy.
He was a bully?
Yeah, he's a bully. Well, let me give you an example. This is in the book. There was a new student that joined Bellwood Grade School. She was a brand new student, walked into a class, okay? She was tall, and it's a class of 8th graders. 8th graders can be pretty mean to one another. She walked into the classroom, and she had a green outfit on, okay? And she's tall. She's a pretty girl, but she's tall. And she walked in the classroom, and Ed said, "Oh, there's the Jolly Green Giant." Well, it just crushed her. It just crushed her. Why would you do that? Why would you do stuff like that? I saw him picking on people, picked on me, tried to steal my girlfriend. And he was very cocky about it. We were walking down a hallway one day with my girlfriend, who later ditched me. That's okay. Anyway, and Netherland does this down the hallway. Well, this is 1972. That meant the peace sign, Vietnam, that's a peace sign. Well, Netherland was not a peace or a hippie at all. He was a jock. So why would he do that? Well, my girl said, because I promised him I would call him in 2 weeks. So the next week, he came down the hall and did this to her, and I looked at him and went this. And I'm surprised he didn't come and knock my face off, because he probably could have. But that's the type of sneaky stuff he did. Just sneaky. I've gotten over it, though. Yes?
Are you gonna write a book about the guy that enabled the landfill and disappeared mysteriously?
I'm intrigued about that.
Probably not. Eddie Matthews, I don't know that much about Eddie, and I know that he and his brother are the ones that sold the extra land to the landfill. But then they moved away, and from what I've heard from, it's kind of rumor mill, is that he had gotten involved in some bad drugs, and it could have been, murder. They never found his body. Probably won't.
Fantastic. Will you be around for a little while afterwards?
Yeah, I'm selling books.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hey,
Billy.
And I'm gonna stand up. So I'm Billy Peter. I'm the guy that got cut off in the picture. But I read the book, and I am a very picky reader, and I've got to say, it is a fantastic read. Besides everything else, it is just really, really well written. It's a Kim's autobiography, partially. And then all these stories mixed in, which is done perfectly, really masterful. I had no idea that you had those kind of skills. He is a fantastic architect, no doubt about it. But for me, besides, when you read, like you see a really good movie, sometimes it really affects you differently. When you read a really good book, it affects you differently. Well, that's my experience. On top of that, this was also, I was there for most of this stuff, so many of these things. Did we meet in 8th grade?
I think we met, in high school.
Was it? I couldn't.
You went to Bellwood?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, we met when we were freshmen.
No,
maybe.
we were in Delta Sigma.
We were in art classes for 2 years with Jean Craig, and she was a phenomenal art teacher. And you and Beth Loki and Ronnie Barrett, the guy that invented the Barrett rifle, was in our art class, and he was really good artist. He was better at making weapons. And a photographer, that's right.
So all these people kept coming up in the book. And we had the high school fraternity. Well, I was at that old South Ball where your girls shot.
You were there with the guy that stole my girlfriend.
I was here. I talked to him the other day.
Please thank him.
And it is such a great book. And really, if you like to read, it's been a long time since I've been able to find good books. Books kind of just, I don't know what happened. They went a little crazy. But this is an awesome read. Pick it up. Definitely, it is a great thing to read. And way to go, Kim.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
I have great friends.
I already got it on Audible, so while it was sitting there. So.
You bought it? Okay. What, it costs like $4?
Well, I have a monthly thing, so I don't know. There's a credit.
So I'm going to get what, a dime?
I don't know what you get. I have no idea. We appreciate you being here, and if you'll stick around for a little bit, I'm sure we'll have some more questions. You can leave it up there.
Okay.
So thank you so much.